Welcome to the Carousel of Happiness podcast. I'm your host, Nick Alexander. Last time around, we spoke with two Ukrainian service members.
My name is Ilya. For now, I am active military.
And we learned about the two Colorado nonprofits that are helping them in their PTSD recovery journeys.
We changed our mission to bringing soldiers here for PTSD and therapy.
This is what one of the guests had to say about being at the Carousel of Happiness on Memorial Day.
First of all, I will show photo videos for my 2-year-old daughter. And as for me, I really like this old carousels because it's history. It's really cool that all of this animal is handmade, and it's really awesome.
In today's episode, we're preparing to observe another holiday, the first annual George Blevins Day. George isn't just Nederland's favorite cartoonist, he's also an author and a great friend of the carousels. In fact, George illustrated the logo for the Carousel of Happiness, which you can see on the image for this podcast. At the center of it is a smiling kid perched atop a zebra. And every time I look at that smiling kid, I smile back a little too. Long before that, George helped his friend Scott Harrison envision the animals that would one day encircle the carousel. The two longtime friends, Scott and George, will sit together at a special booth out front of the carousel on George Blevins Day. So come out, play a game, win a book, and get it signed. The event will be on August 1st and 2nd, 2026. We hope to see you there. But as for George Blevins, well, he wants you to know that he had nothing to do with it.
I want to say that I did not have any input in that. I was just told it was going to be George Blevins Day, and I said, oh, okay. Well.
In fact, George is feeling pretty humble about George Blevins Day.
Yes, and it's totally unnecessary and uncalled for, but there it is. And I'm prepared to reveal the real reason for having declared it.
Okay.
Which is that they're overstocked in their storage area with old cabin fever books, and so they're just going to give them away. And I'm there to sign them to help encourage people to take them. It's not so important where they go; it's just that they be gone, and that's the incentive for declaring George Blevins Day.
Nevertheless, I decided I wanted to start celebrating George Blevins Day early this year. Not only did I read some of his work on georgesefforts.com, I sat down with George and asked to hear his life story. I sort of had to draw it out of him, but George eventually told me the tale. How he achieved his ultimate childhood dream, how he met Walt Disney, collaborated with Scott on the carousel, and how the dragon boat came to be his favorite animal.
Rational human being would be.
It's a good yarn, and George had me smiling at every bend and twist. So get comfortable, put up your feet, put on a pot of tea. Now, let us begin with today's story.
Everything broke well for me, I think. I often say that the arbitrary unfairness of life is wonderfully illustrated by me because I was born at the very end of 1939. Unknown to me, of course, I was a recipient of a long span of time in U.S. history. A nice span of time where everything was easy, and so when I was a kid, what I wanted to do, I remember on Sunday mornings, my sister and I would jump into bed with my parents, and my father would read the Sunday Fundies to us. And there was a strip called Pogo, which was done by a guy named Walt Kelly, who had been an animator for Disney, and you could tell by his style that he had been a Disney animator. And he did a strip that often made no sense. An alligator and a possum, Pogo was the possum, and various other animal characters. I had a daydream, a fantasy for a long time that one day I would get a job with Walt Kelly as his inker. And And then after I'd done it for some years, he would say, you know what? I'm tired and you've got to hang for this now. You just take over the strip. Well, that never happened, but that was my primary simple-minded drive in life, was to do a comic strip. It didn't meet anybody's wishes for me, but my own. And I never figured out how to make a living at it. I doubt that there's a whole lot of money to be made for my inheritors.
Sure.
And I, like I say, I've got enough. I don't worry about it. So yeah, it's good. One of the reasons I picked the art school I went to, Chenard Art Institute, was because Walt Disney was on the board of directors. And I actually, I sort of met Walt Disney. I was walking back from lunch to class and walking down the sidewalk, and I saw Walt Disney himself walking in my direction with several other fellows in suits. And I thought, oh my God, it's Walt Disney. What'll I say to him? What can I say to him? What excuse can I find to speak to him? And before I could do any of that, he spoke to me. And he said, your shoe's untied. And I looked down, and it was. I bent down to tie it, looked up again, and he was gone.
Oh,
so that was my Zen moment with Walt Disney. Yeah.
That is, well, I guess that was lucky that your shoe was untied, maybe. I don't know. He spoke to you.
But I did luckily move here to Nederland in about 1982, and I saw the local paper was an excellent paper. Kay Turnbaugh, who founded the paper, she had been raised by a mother who taught journalism, and she had a really strong journalistic ethic, more so, I think, than you would find in most rural newspapers, and it was definitely not just something that was put out in order to sell advertising so
Sure.
you could make a living at it. And I went to her and took just a bunch of stuff I'd drawn, and I'd like to do editorial cartoons for you. You just guys tell me what's going on, and I'll do something, and I'll work for nothing. So she considered it for a week or so and got back to me and said, all right, you can do it, but there are two conditions. One, you can pick our minds for what's going on, but you have to have your own ideas. I said, well, sure, yeah, I'd assumed that. Yeah. And the other condition was you can't work for free. So I bit the bullet and said, okay. I think I took $10 or $15 a week and for a long time. So that was my main purpose, my main incentive for years, was to figure out how to make enough income to get by while I cranked out a comic strip. And, cranked out an editorial cartoon, and later on a comic strip.
Right. Started with the editorial cartoons and then a 6-panel comic strip, which was called
Cabin Fever.
Cabin Fever, exactly.
Yeah. I made it 6 panels, 3 above and 3 below, a block of 6 panels, because one of the things about most comic strips was the brevity imposed upon them by 4 panels. Made it hard to get to a punchline. But if you had 6 panels to work on, that's enough. You could make a point. You could figure out how to word things so that you would get to the punchline. Not that I always did get to a successful punchline, but at least it gave me room for an honest effort. And so then I took that to Kay, and she said, you can do it. So I think the most I ever made from the newspaper was about $40 a week. Of course, $40 a week,
went further.
20 years ago,
Sure.
went further. as $40 now would go further than it will next week,
Sure.
considering the rate of inflation.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. So I designed my life around it. You know, I worked at jobs that would allow me the time and the mental time to work up something, both as an editorial cartoon and as a comic strip once a week for 20 odd years. I managed it, you know. So humble thing that it was my life stream, and I did manage to fulfill it.
So it was woven into part of it was coming from the culture of Nederland, and it wove back into the culture of Nederland, and, you know, for a good long time. So I think it is something to be proud of.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I do too, but we're probably in the minority, but nonetheless. That, and then I did another little book that I've always been proud of was Mr. Turtle Meets Miss Ladybug. It's a little bit of a tearjerker, actually, but it's not very long.
My kids are a big fan of your book, and the greatest compliment I think that a parent can tell a children's book author is that I learned to really be tired of your book. I got so bored of it because for a while there, it was like every night and maybe sometimes twice in a night I would read it. So I got to know every beat of that book pretty well. And could you tell me a little bit about what the process of making that book was like?
It was a book that wrote itself. It just seemed every page said just what it wanted to say, and with great brevity, which is a wonderful thing, brevity. And I wish I could do more of it here. And then I did another third book that also I never found a publisher for. Finding publishers is one of the biggest challenges, especially with books being mostly now digital.
Sure.
And that was my attempt to educate myself in the process of doing a book called Milo and Biscuit's Guide to Evolution.
You know, that seems like you must have been ready for a challenge because, you know, it's the ladybug story came to you so naturally, and then you're like, let's take on a tough subject. And so you tried to explain the origin of the whole cosmos, more or less.
Yes. The incentive wasn't so much to take on a tough project because I've always been a very lazy guy. And if there was two ways to do a thing and one of them didn't sacrifice too much by being easy, I took that route.
Sure.
No, the incentive for that was just that I really wanted to understand what the major scientific view was on how the universe and everything in it came to be, you know, and it's been fascinating.
It's a really wonderful book between the artistry and, you know, some of those pictures that are really abstract and challenging things to explain. The pace of it keeps moving. It's a dialogue between two characters. And then there's that lower strip panel that explains in even more depth if you want to, you know, if you want to understand more. So I found it a very well-crafted book. And I'd say that that's a very successful thing as a writer.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Nice review.
Well, thank you. Well, and you said that it's hard to get published, but it's and at the same hand, it's easier than ever to publish if you're, you know, the great news is that anyone all around the world can read these books. Because of the online publishing. And in fact, it seems like you've left all of the evolution book is kind of you can read at, I think it's called georgesefforts.com, right? And so I went and I read the whole book just from the comfort of my browser, and it was very nice.
As you say, I did figure out how to display it freely to anybody who wants to read it. And the major thing was to get it read, not to make money, especially since at 86, having a fixed rate income and a fixed rate mortgage, I'm pretty well set for whatever portion of a decade remains to me, you know. So I don't need the money, and I did get it out there. Yeah.
Yeah, that is, there's different levels of success as an artist, and, it's great if it can be read by millions or billions of people all over the world and make you all the money in the world. But I think making art is a success, finishing a piece is a success.
And, uh, more basic than getting rich is just figuring out how to do something and be able to do it and not starve to death in the act.
Sure. Well, can you tell me a bit about your relationship with Scott and then your role in helping draw some cartoons that helped become carousel animals?
Yeah. The first I really was made aware of it was that Scott came to me one day and said, "Draw me a pig." And he meant a pig as a carousel figure that he would then carve, So I drew it, and we went back and forth a little bit, and I got it, how he'd like it, so he could then take measurements and map it out on these blocks of wood that he glued together. And then he dutifully, gradually, laboriously carved all of the figures. And like I say, he said, "Draw me a pig." And I drew him a pig. And it was a few weeks later that he came and got me and took me over to his house, and he showed me the pig, And I said, "Now, where do the eyes go?" And stuff like that, And so that was my part of, and in some cases, he knew what he was doing.
Sure.
And the more further along he went, the more he knew what he was doing. And I never quite fully succeeded in convincing him not to tell people, "George and I made all these figures on the carousel." The carousel was as my unwarranted desire to do a comic strip. He had this poorly supported notion that just came of his own volition, and then he plugged, this whole idea of a carousel. But all the actual incentive and all the actual physical labor involved in it was just Scott. And he complains that I would probably be more humble in this interview than I ought to be. It's he that is the more humble of the two of us.
Well, you guys are both going to be in trouble with each other for being too humble and trying to give each other too much credit for all of it. You guys are just going to have to go back and forth on this fight.
Well, it's an enjoyable battle. So
That's good.
The one that I'm most personally invested in is the dragon boat, which is just a boat that you can, two people or more can sit in, and it had a curving head of a dragon, and the face of the dragon was based on my father.
Oh,
My father, before he got his teeth redone, had a sort of gap in his, where they poked out a little bit, and there was a gap in the middle. He just looked like he was thinking dirty thoughts when he grinned, and then later he got his teeth straightened out so that he looked like he might be thinking something clean when he grinned. But so if you go down and look at the dragon boat, you see my daddy with a grin.
Well, I understand that the dragon boat is one of the favorites with really little kids because, it's a good first foray. You can get in there in the safety of the boat and have a little bit of space to move around maybe and have your mom or dad there with you or your uncle or whoever. Well, wonderful. Yeah, and I know that you guys are still friends to this day. It seems like you guys were getting breakfast at the diner this morning, right?
Once a week we all meet, and he has a portrait of Doug, the one the one of us who's now no longer with us. So he brings that and sets that at the end of the table, and we all raise our coffee cups and toast Doug, and so he's with us as much as he can be, and we do stick together. Yeah.
Well, I know that neither of you guys got rich with your artistic creations, but I think it's better to be rich with friendship and community, and it seems like you guys are doing just fine on that front.
Yes, that's true. But I think it's important to give a credit to the three wives that I went through in the process of just making minimal money so that I could pursue what I wanted to do, and to my four sons who managed to successfully and I think happily survive. So one of them is a judge, and the other boys did well too. Yeah.
Yeah. None of them went into cartooning then?
No. Yeah, I taught them something anyway. Yeah. And those who had kids, one of them finally produced two girls. So I have some female inheritors.
Oh, nice.
And since if the world unfolds, the country unfolds as it should, and women's rights are eventually respected in full, now then they'll do all right.
Yeah. Well, may that be how it goes, and we've come a long ways, and there's a long ways to go still, with all of that, with being fair. Well, I did want to talk to you about that, and Scott warned me that that you would be humble about this as well. But he wanted to make sure I asked you about your time as a freedom rider. Could you tell me about that?
Yeah, I don't think it should take too long. And in keeping with the humility, I have to admit that a lot of my incentive to sign up for Freedom Rides came from I was going to
Actually, hold that thought. I want to give George's harrowing account of his activism as a freedom rider the focus that it deserves on a future episode that's dedicated entirely to it. For now, let's go back to the present day, where I ask George about what's next. Can I ask you, are you still cartooning? Are you still drawing? Are you writing anything right now?
What I'm trying to do now is learn an animation program.
Oh, cool.
So I can take Milo and Biscuit and turn it into a comics.
Sure, yeah.
An illustrated moving
Animated
cartoon,
story.
animated
Yeah, cartoon.
cartoon.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And whether I do it or not, partly depends upon my willingness to give way to the temptations of AI.
Yeah.
So it's hard to turn down that temptation, even though
Yeah.
I know that AI takes up an inordinate amount of energy.
Well, that's a whole other interesting conversation I'd like to have with folks at some point. AI and how it's affecting art and all of that and the planet. Well, as you can hear, the carousels get started. We're opening up. Let me try to ask a little bit to just kind of wrap it up and ask about where things are at now. So I see you sometimes volunteering at the Gilpin County Library. Are you still doing that?
Yeah, actually, I get paid.
Oh, nice. Okay, great.
Yeah, and I work 2-hour afternoons a week, and if you consider sitting behind the front desk, getting up to put away books every once in a while, checking them in and checking them out, and staying awake while you're doing it. If that's what you call work, I work. But I only do it about 10 or 15 hours a week.
Oh, good.
And while I'm making more than minimum wage seems to me, like I say, I have a fixed rate mortgage, so I'm not too worried. And minimum wage when I first came on the scene was $1.25 an hour, and so now it's like what, $15.70 an hour is a minimum wage. Every time I look at that, I think, my God, I could live for a week on that. Oh no, wait, I can't. Yeah. So yeah, like I say, life is too good to me to be justified by my just desserts.
I feel the same way. I do not deserve all the good fortune I have received in this beautiful world. So I guess we can both count ourselves lucky.
Yep.
Well, very cool, George. Thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Speaking of ego,
Sure.
It was a pleasure to talk about myself for God knows how long.
Well, I really enjoyed it too. And gosh, I want to talk to you more and ask more follow-up questions, but I know you've left. We said our goodbyes. I left him to his work, and he left me sitting there with a little smile on my face. I have a feeling he's had that effect on a lot of people over the years. Well, thank you, George, and thank you for listening. In my opinion, there's no better way to honor and celebrate an author than by reading their work. And so you can do that right at this moment by visiting George's website, which is humbly titled georgesefforts.com. And I really recommend you do it, no matter your age. His books are really great. His illustrations are great. And like the carousel itself, George's work is often whimsical and lighthearted, but it doesn't stray away from complexity or from hard truths. And if you like what you read, then come out to the carousel on August 1st and 2nd. Play a game, laugh, and add a few very special local books to your home library. And maybe George and Scott will tell you the story of how they collaborated when designing some of the carousel's animals, but I can almost assure you the two good friends will start arguing with each other, trying to give the other one more credit. Should be fun. However you choose to celebrate, we'd like to wish you a very happy George Blevins Day. Unfortunately, we're already late for another important date. Tickets are sold out for the tea party that the Carousel of Happiness is hosting on Tuesday, July 21st. We'll have to ask Sarah Bishop the next time she's on if she can spill the tea on how it went at this whimsical and elegant affair. The next few episodes of this show are going to continue covering artistic subject matter. We'll ask Sarah about her music, and we'll get to hear the poetry of the Carousel, written by Bert Rashbaum, And we'll get the inside scoop on the carousel's humble beginnings from Scott Harrison himself.
So I used just scrap lumber, not really carving wood, not hardwood, just to see if I could make something that looked like a rabbit. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. It was a pretty simple looking animal, but it was a good start.
I'm looking forward to all of it, but don't worry, I'll still remember to make a full episode of George's account of his days as a freedom rider. It's a pretty riveting tale, and one still more relevant today than it ought to be. You don't want to miss it. So if you have a moment now, you may want to use the subscribe button on this podcast. Go ahead, I can wait. Okay, thanks. That's all I've got today. In the meantime, take care, be well, and as we like to say at the Carousel of Happiness, don't delay joy. And we'll see you next time around.
Beginnings and endings are only pretendings. I'll see you next time around. I'll see you next